We're reconvening to the regular session of the Newman-Crows Landing Unified School District for November 9th, 2020. May I please have everyone say the pledge? Okay. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I have nothing to report at this moment about out of closed session, public communication, agenda, and non-agenda items. Complaints against specific district employees should be resolved through the district personal complaint procedure. The right to address the board does not exempt the speaker from any potential liability for defamation. The proceedings of the board are recorded and are part of the public record. Any individual who requires disability-related accommodations or modifications, including auxiliary aids and services, in order to participate in this board meeting, should contact the superintendent or designee in writing. Members of the public may address the board on agenda and non-agenda items. Members of the public are encouraged to submit public comments via email at nfox@nclusd.k12.ca.us. Comments must be received by 2 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. Please limit your comments to 250 words or less. If you are unable to email a public comment, please contact Nancy Fox. Leave a phone message with your question or comment at 209-862-2933 prior to 2 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. Please limit your comments to 250 words or less. For public comment submitted by email or phone, please provide the following: name, phone number in case we need further clarification. Address is optional. Affiliation, if any. Topic or item on the agenda you wish to address. Please limit your comments to 250 words or less. May I please have an approval of the agenda? A motion?
Tim moved.
Tim?
I'll second.
Oh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Not in favor? Okay, it passes 5-0. Information discussion items. Student Representative Diego Garcia is going to report to us.
Good evening, NCLUSD. I've come to you on this fine, it's a Monday, right? Yes, on a Monday, to report to you what's going on currently at Orstema High School. So started off, we had the student survey campaign that was facilitated between me, Mr. Philpott, and Mr. Pruitt. This was basically to get insight on how students are reacting to the current distance learning situation, at least from the high school level, and the challenges, successes, and other tribulations they may be facing as a result of distance learning. And the data was very telling, I will say that. I ensured that we had a little campaign going on to have students avidly participate in the survey, because this information goes directly back to the teachers, and it's going to make it significantly easier from here on out. And so we have completed that, and Mr. Philpott will have more on that later on. As far as fundraisers, at Oristema, the band blanket sales will be starting up soon in November. The Gustine and Oristema High School student councils will be meeting to plan a a rivalry week, as we would traditionally have. Of course, COVID had to come and ruin that for everybody. So we're going to try to make a different solution, either that be virtually or in the spring. And we are going to be having a conjoint meeting between both student councils next week, I believe, because we didn't have a meeting this week. We also ensure that students are starting to utilize homework help, which has always been around since the beginning of the year, but I feel that recently we have definitely pushed and motivated students to participate in it and to actually get the help that they need And we even had some students address their fair share of pros and their fair share of cons at least for my own student council meeting last week, in which students shared that sometimes there aren't appointments available at the time that they need for the subject that they're looking to get help in, which is one of the biggest issues. And especially the more involved you get in school, the less time you actually have for that. So that was one of the big things that I noticed. But students do say that it has helped them. Another thing that might have augmented to the lack of usage is the fact that it was barely added to the class link, which schools are starting to use now, at least from my perspective. It was barely added onto your Canvas so that you were connected to your class link where you would have access to all these different things. And I saw it only in study hall, but I know my government class, for example, is starting to utilize it as well when you're signing into Canvas, as well as getting onto your Zoom session. So I think that that's definitely going to encourage students to actually participate in it. Measure X passed, I saw that. So that was something that we noted as a school. We had our campaign to encourage students to get out and vote with the election that was just passed. We had a student actually work one of the polls. Nicole Flanders, a senior at Orstumba, really good person, by the way. She worked at the polls over the week to help out with students and other people who were wanting to give in their ballot. So thank you, Nicole. FFA will be starting public speaking as of tomorrow in its different competitions, ranging from extemporaneous to prepared, impromptu, job interview, and then eventually the creed as well. So that gives students another thing to look forward to throughout this, really hectic time we're currently experiencing. FFA is also planning their regular monthly meetings. They were going to plan a drive-in, but that will be pushed back to the spring when the climate can actually work for it. They will be having a drive-by pickup for materials that they might need for a couple labs for different classes, and a Christmas tree fundraiser coming up as well in December on the 11th and 12th. So if you're interested in purchasing a Christmas tree, you know where to go. Let's see, what else do I have? Other clubs are meeting on a regular scheduled basis. The Hispanic Youth Leadership Council. We will actually be hosting our first cluster meeting with other schools from the H12C chapters all around the valley next month, and we are going to be trying to get a couple really special guest speakers there. So we are working on that. GSA is still avidly meeting and making sure that their members are kindling new relationships with one another. The Science Club is having a lot of activity. It's quite impressive, actually. They have a lot of amazing guest speakers, ranging on anything from the dental industry to medicine, engineering, a plethora of different fields, all of them which are STEM related. So it's quite impressive. So good on the Science Club. Gaming Club is also going to be meeting up soon and meeting up with their members avidly, and the Fine Arts Club as well recently had their first meeting. We also, and last on the agenda before I take up any more of your time, is that we had a couple students, including myself, attend the 2020 CATA conference, which is a organization that helps with student curriculum and different ASB groups all around California, and even a couple that are outside of the state. So we had a couple students, including myself, from at least at the executive level and the senior level, attend the conference and get some feedback on how to go about their leadership and events this year. And I know that the Interact Club as well also sent a couple members. But apart from that, Orstumba is thriving as much as we can in the middle of a global pandemic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Are there any questions for Mr. Garcia?
If I may just add to Diego's presentation, he mentioned at the very beginning that Diego and Principal Pruitt and myself worked on a thought exchange. And I think this is a great time to kind of talk about just kind of overview of kind of what happened. So it actually, what the thought that was put out was, what are some of the hashtag successes and hashtag challenges you're experiencing with distance learning? And this was pushed out to all of our 950 students at OHS. Diego did a terrific job of advertising it for us, and I'm pleased to say that we had over 237 participants spread out between 9th and 12th grade. Predominantly our juniors and seniors were the most active. However, everybody participated. 296 thoughts, and that came with over 5,700 ratings on the variety of thoughts. The breakdown actually on the grade level was about 13% ninth grade, 16% 10th, 33% 11th grade, and 38% 12th graders responded to the thought exchange. The thought actually, the key thoughts that were shared actually, and then there was with 296, we're not going to read all 296 tonight. I'm going to share just the top 3, which go as follows. And this scored basically a 4.2 out of 5 in terms of rating. It said, another struggle I am dealing with is the weekends. All during the weekend, I am doing homework. I feel like I never have a break. That makes me scared for Thanksgiving, Christmas, etc. Those breaks because of how many assignments they will give us, then because we have a whole week. Another thought was, very key thought was, nothing, everything's the same every day. And the third one, key thought was, some challenges I'm experiencing with online learning is the workload. The workload is an important factor of online learning because you don't want it to be too big because that puts a great amount of stress on you. And then the way the thought exchange works is it kind of combines all these thoughts into general themes. And so the top 3 themes that occurred were one, assignments, where basically it talked about one of the thoughts I just shared with you about the struggling dealing with the weekends. Also, it dealt with hashtag challenge I experienced is assignments. Sometimes I feel a bit overwhelmed. There were even times where I had to put one assignment aside to work on another assignment. One challenge that I'm experiencing with distance learning is keeping up with the amount of assignments that are given out. So those are the top thoughts regarding assignments theme. And then another theme that emerged was challenges regarding mental health. And in one, a student reported out, a hashtag challenge is maintaining stable mental health, trying to balance physical health, school, work, family, loneliness, and mental is definitely not easy. Second, another challenge I'm experiencing during this time is mental health. Mental health has been my biggest struggle during the pandemic. Seeing your friends and socializing is so important, so without seeing them, it's been hard, and I don't want to expose my family, so I don't go out. And the third one in this theme was hashtag challenges. A lot of teenagers struggle with mental health issues. Not being lenient with late assignments is unfair to people who may struggle to even get up in the morning. And then the third theme that rose out of this was challenges in motivation is now hard. And the first one was in that category was a hashtag challenge that I tend to experience is lacking the motivation to do my assignments. It's affecting my grades more than ever before. Second, challenge of mine right now is that I have no motivation for school. It's hard. And the third one that was the rated the highest in that theme was my main challenge is finding energy because online school is so draining. Very hard to stay awake during math on the recording. I'll speed up the teacher's voice, and I think those are most useful, but Zoom sucks. So I'm just sharing some of the comments with you. The last part of this I just want to share with you is that we will be pushing out the details of this to teachers by grade level, by the entire school, to have them basically consider thoughtfully what they have learned and what we have learned, and I know Diego has learned from the experiences of this and the shared thoughts of 237 students at Oristema.
Mr. Wallace.
Came through in the chat asking if the survey responses were going to be made available to the public.
And they will, it probably in summary form because 296 thoughts comes out to about 40 pages of notes. Garcia has any comments?
Mr. Garcia.
I feel as though oftentimes, and especially as a student entering the next phase of their life, finding that motivation and that just will to get out of bed is the hardest thing that you can do as a student, whether you're in person or whether you're at home. And, you know, it gets everything is situational and everybody experiences a different issue that for them is their reason and their why for not wanting to get out of bed. And I think that above all, mental health is probably the biggest reason behind why so many students are struggling. I've had my own quarrels, and I'm sure that even the Board of Trustees here have had their own issues as well. And do I really want to do this report? Because that's ultimately the most human thing about this entire experience. And it's very difficult. Like I said, whether you're a 7th grader, a freshman, junior in high school, 47 years old, doesn't matter. Mental health is probably the biggest challenge that we are facing. You could consider it as big of an epidemic as the actual virus itself. So what I'm hoping is that we will be able to institute a lot more mental health resources that exceed just finding maybe someone to talk to and giving a realistic approach to mental health, because everyone experiences it and struggles with it in their own way. And tackling it universally seems kind of difficult to fully satisfy for everyone. And so that's what I'm really hoping that not just teachers, but students and everyone will be able to gain out of this thought survey that I participated in. So thank you to the students who participated.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. It's eye-opening. I think adults think of, we have the mundane part, but a big part of high school has to do with socialization and learning to be with each other and have fun, and also give each other a hug once in a while. So it's very difficult. But one thing that we all have to remember is that not only our country, but also the whole world is now going through this. So you need to reach out to your friends as best as you can. And if not, I'm available if you need me. You can always use my email, and I believe all of the other board members and staff would be available. But come to somebody if you feel that upset, please. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, the family member wasn't able to make it, and so they asked if we could put it off to next meeting. So we're going to be doing that at the December meeting.
That's one of the things we miss the most, is not seeing our students and being able to congratulate them face to face and see their parents' joy in their reactions. So the next number 3, we have all of our readings to do, our homework, and as our student has homework, so do we. And it tends to be boring sometimes, but we have a lot of ARs to read and that. So next we have Mrs. Mendoza, and she has a report on the nutritional services update.
Yes, good evening. I'm going to share my screen here momentarily. Did that come up? Okay. Okay. So I wanted to do an update on what we've been doing for nutrition services. This is one of the things that's been kind of a major undertaking since March. It's been one of the most critical things. This and transportation, and just making sure that we're providing services to students. So from March to October, we ran, I'll give you a little bit of history. March to July, we ran what they call the seamless summer feeding option, which meant we could feed everybody, any student, any child in Newman or Crows Landing or Diablo Grande, ages 1 to 18. No, everybody was free, anybody could eat. And it was great. We were able to service a lot of people. In August, the USDA changed back to where we had to run National School Lunch Program, which had a lot more limitations. And then in September, they reversed their decision and we were able to go back to seamless summer, which is where we are right now. The USDA has been working with us on a lot of waivers to allow us a lot of program flexibility, which has been great. So during the summer and still currently, we're doing a curbside pickup at all TK5 sites and YOLO. We use the Orstimba staff to do deliveries to rural Newman, rural Crows Landing, and Diablo Grande. And then in November, when we transition to hybrid learning we have students now on campus. So now we're feeding the students on campus. And then as well as the curbside for those who are who are still distance learning, and we're still maintaining all the rural deliveries as well. We've also provided a lot of support to the community. Since March, between March 1st and October 30th, we served over 463,000 meals to children ages 1 to 18. We did 7,500 meals to senior citizens through the program here. We distributed 8,400 USDA food boxes, which is over 212,000 pounds of food into the community. And then we now are providing breakfast, lunch, and supper 7 days a week for students, for all children ages 1 to 18. Unfortunately, the round 4 of the USDA food boxes were not able to access those because they were only approved one supplier in the state of California, and it's down in Fullerton. So they're not able to accommodate all of the agencies that want to provide those. We feel right now it's time we've discussed this in the past, but we think it's time to go back to self-operated. I know we broached this a couple of years ago and we kind of pulled back, but I think really now I think we're well positioned to do that. I wanted to tell you how we're going to do it and why we're going to do it. Why is because we're going to have increasing pressure to raise our fees for our management company will want to raise their fees. We were able to hold them off last year. We were able to negotiate a flat. There was no increase for this school year. They're not going to want to do that 2 years in a row. So with the pressure to raise the meal fees along with the increasing retirement costs, it's just not going to continue to be financially viable. And we've been marketing our program all along, and especially since March, we've really put a lot of time into marketing it ourselves. I don't feel we're getting the support from the company that we need to. There have been restrictions on product availability, and that's not necessarily their fault. There's been a lot of supply chain issues this year, but there's still limitations on what we're able to access. And when we ran the numbers, when I ran it on a normal year, I used last year because this year's kind of an anomaly. So we're still, we'd still see a savings even hiring a full-time director. So how will we do this? The first step would be notifying the board, which we're doing this evening. And then I'll go into contacting area cooperative purchasing groups. I've kind of ascertained that would be the best direction for us to go rather than us doing all the procurement ourselves. Child nutrition is one of the most regulated, most nitpicked programs, and it's run by the USDA, and they're very regulation heavy. So, and procurement is a huge area of their focus. So going through a co-op, that will allow them, the co-op does all the procurement, they keep all the records, everything is accessible to the members of the co-op when it's time to go through a review. And then we would need to create a job description and post for the director in the spring and notify CDE and Sodexo of non-renewal. And then we'll roll it out July 1st, 2021. I really don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a tough transition. I really think this is something we can manage. I just think the time has come that we need to take this step. Okay, so I ran some numbers looking at this year versus next year for salaries and benefits. I forecasted step and column movement, increased to PERS, and included a director's salary. We looked at food and supplies, which we factor about a 5% increase. for food costs and a one-time software purchase. We'll also have to purchase a computer for the director. Our outside services, that's where our biggest decrease comes from, because we're not paying Sodexo management fees. Our indirect costs are it's a cost you can charge a categorical program that goes back to the general fund. So it helps to offset administrative costs to run the program. So we are not usually able to charge a lot of indirect costs to this without going into the red. So this year I'm forecasting that we'll charge $5,000 of indirect costs. Next year we can put $102,000 back into the general fund. So even with that, even with the manager, even with the director's salary and charging indirect costs, we're still saving about $72,000. Then that money goes back into our program. So that's why I'm recommending that we discuss going back to self-op. Does anyone have any questions?
Is there anyone, Mr. Wallace?
Could you talk a little, how many of these buying groups are around? How many districts make up a buying group, or what are you finding in that environment?
There's one that's in Stanislaus County, Stanislaus and San Joaquin County. There's a good sized one in Merced and a little bit south. So we'd probably go with the more northern one, because the southern one, I think the furthest north it goes is Las Banas. But we talked to them. We'll reach out to several. I know there's one over on the coast. That's a good one. So we could go with more than one. There's several there's some that just do produce. There's some that do all kinds of market ingredients. So we'll look at the different ones that are available, and we'll just start writing letters and seeing which ones we can be a part of more than one. So for different items.
Then how do you think it's going to affect the menu and what your offerings are?
Well, we still will divert our commodities, and that's a big part of what makes up our menu. We have so many dollars that we get. You get a certain amount per meal, per lunch, and that goes to USDA commodities. That goes to offset a lot of your center of the plate costs. That's how we run it. Some districts run it just for produce, but we run it for center of the plate, trying to defer that cost a little bit. So I think we can be a little bit more creative if we see a product that we like, that we can divert commodity to. A lot of our just processors have different product lines that we're not necessarily able to get right now, but we could try, because we have commodities with them. We could do it like, for example, say with Tyson, we divert all of our chicken to Tyson. We divert to another group too. If Tyson they have 1,000 products that we could do. We don't have to divert it to a specific product. So we'll have more options that way. This year, because of how we're serving, we're back to a single menu item, K-12. We'll go back and we'll open it back up when we're back full time. We'll open it back to more variety. But what we've been doing seems to be working fairly well.
If I could follow up on that, I think what I was trying to decide is, do you think this will expand the number of menu items we can offer, or at least make it as good a menu as we used to have?
Yes.
Your microphone's on.
Well, sorry, wasn't that great?
I used to.
Yeah, I think so, because we will have, I'm not saying that we'll do all of them every day, or, because before March, we were doing a choice of 4 entrees at the elementary. We had 10 or 12 at the middle school and the high school. I don't know that we would go back to that extent every day, but we would have a bigger variety to choose from to build a menu for the month. Okay. We might be able to go through a 4-week menu cycle instead of a 2-week menu cycle and offer different things.
And is it your opinion that the quality of the food will not suffer? In other words, it'll be at
least
as good as what we put out now?
Yes, because it's the same staff.
Okay.
So that won't change.
Mrs. Mendoza, do you, do you do a menu plan for like 2 weeks or a week? And do they send you a list of what kinds of foods will be available before you make the menu? Like say October, we have the ground beef and we have chicken and
Yes.
whatever.
So the way it works now is we have, especially since we try to center it around our commodities, we know we get commodities about 5 or 6 times a year. We know what's coming. We build the menu on what we know we'll have, and then we try to supplement it from there. So we'll still have that capability to run it that way. It's kind of tricky to do a 4-week menu cycle, because if you only have something once and then you don't repeat it. Right now we're doing a 2-week menu cycle, so we'll run for 10 days and then start over. And that has seemed to work well the last several years doing it that way. So yeah, we plan out for the month, and then we're early November, we're already planning for December menu. It's probably mostly knowing what we have and what we may get for commodity. They'll send us a list of this is what you're getting, and then we plan it from there.
Does this include the outside meals that we're doing? Or when we go back, when we start this, hopefully COVID will go back almost back to normal. So then will the meals only be in school, or will we also do the seniors? And
we'll still do the seniors. We're still under contract with the county for that. As far as our delivery model, it will depend on the waivers. I know the waivers that we have right now that allow us to do the curbside and the in-person and feeding kids 1 to 18, and not necessarily whether or not they're enrolled with us. Those are extended through June 30th. So whether then we'll see what happens July 1st going forward, how that will affect our model going forward.
thank you. Are there any other questions for Mrs. Mendoza? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have Mr. Philpott, the school reopening update.
Yeah, so I'm just going to focus on elementary. That's really what we opened up last Monday with 2 different hybrid cohorts. I will tell you that it was, well, you probably saw some pictures in the paper of the students. Everybody was pretty happy. I think our kids were happy to be back. They were excited to be back in classes. Our teachers were well prepared. It really went like clockwork, getting them into classes. Each student was temperature checked before they came in, and kind of organized into their little group, and then went in their classroom. So it's one cohort meets on a Monday and a Tuesday. They meet from about 8 to almost noon. They get a nutrition kind of break in the morning and whatnot. So some food in the morning, and then they have a grab and go lunch in the afternoon. Really, things went so smoothly. The only kind of somewhat hiccups that we had occasionally were the busing, which is understandable, because we were requiring the parents to actually do a self-assessment on their student for health prior to getting on the bus. We had a lot of new rules. It's assigned seating. When they get on the bus, there's a bus monitor that steps off, takes their temperature, asks them, if they had their self-assessment done, and then gets to make sure that they're sitting in their assigned seat, and then the bus takes off again. So each bus only is about not even half full, because we have kind of a zigzag seating, if you will, so they're not sitting across from each other. Siblings can sit next to each other. So far that's working pretty well. Again, like I said, a couple hiccups the first couple of days. We have new bus drivers, which it was just always kind of interesting. They're learning the routes. They're learning also kind of the rules of the road in terms of how to deal with the kids assignment wise. But it went very well. So we're already started now with the second week today, the first cohort again. And then what happens is in the afternoon on those Tuesdays, Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday cohorts, is that there's distance learning. It's continuing on. On Wednesday, it's completely distance learning for all of our elementary students. I think the biggest thing that's happening right now is our teachers, we got to give them a little bit of grace to kind of learn something totally new. They kind of perfected the distance learning for nearly 3 months. And now they're into the second week of a new system of hybrid where they're teaching. And I noticed that some teachers are actually doing some Zoom meetings with their kids in class and the kids who are actually also on distance learning. So they're trying different things. And I think we're going to see some good results. The classrooms that I visited, mainly some kinder classes at both Barrington and over at Hunt. Again, kids were very happy about being there. They were on task. Teachers are just excited and ecstatic to see their students for the first time. I think the most interesting story is that where I started off Monday morning last week was at at Bonita, which actually has 2 buses of students going there every day. And I was talking to our new principal there, Rachel Henley, and she was kind of welcoming the kids and greeting them and getting them to go into the appropriate gate, and into their classes. Suddenly it dawned on me that she's never seen these kids in person before. As a principal, I mean, she's dealt with parents, she knows the parents, she knows the students by Zoom. And a lot of our teachers are the same way. This is the first time they've seen these students. And so it's just exciting about that. And we hope that things continue well and stuff through Christmas and reevaluate things as we move forward. So good start.
I'd like to add on top of that, I was walking on Thursday, stopped. The school bus was coming in. My neighbor was there with her son, and I was anxious to find out how this happened. We need to relax. I mean, the door opened, the child started to walk on the bus. The bus driver greeted them. The monitor came over right away and said, "I'm going to take your temperature." And then they had a list. She checked his name and she showed him his seat and she said, "This is where you're going to sit from now on till it changes." The bus took off and the mother looked at me and she said, "That is so much better than I thought." And then later on that afternoon, I saw the young man again and I said, "How was school?" He said, "Oh, it was so nice and it was safe." And for a 5th grader to say that, and he was excited about it. I mean, so our administration has done a good job with our school bus system as far as I know. Thank you, Mr. Philpott, for helping do that and the rest of your staff. Are there any questions about reopening from any board members? Mr. Garcia.
Sorry, I can't help but ask. So as far as upper level schooling with the middle school and the high school, would, under the theory that we'd be going back in January, fingers crossed, would it also be a hybrid model?
So, the guidance right now on that from the state is that the only thing that we can offer actually at the secondary level is what's called a small cohort to bring back kids who are most vulnerable. And some of that is based upon whether or not they have internet access or challenges. We've brought back already, as you may know, some small cohorts that deal with labs that they need to be able to complete for science classes, some special ed students, some of our English learner students. So, what's going to happen probably in January is, and what really is very important from the thought exchange that you helped with, and the information we're going to give teachers is what types of things we can provide for students in January. We're going to continue the course right now of distance learning through the remainder of this semester, but I would like to encourage all of our teachers at the secondary level to take on a small cohort of students that are in greatest need of their assistance. But it wouldn't be a hybrid because what we're trying to avoid is mixing of students. Secondary works a lot different than elementary, and in elementary, every student is in a class with one teacher, a self-contained classroom. That just doesn't work the same way necessarily at the secondary level, where you have an 8-period block schedule, 4 periods a day, and you're moving from class to class. We haven't figured out, and I don't think anybody's really figured out a safe way of actually making that happen. And so we're going to continue to get our guidance from county health in what is appropriate and what we can do as we return back in January for the second semester.
I'd actually like to make a comment on that as well. I did. Part of my decisions as a trustee to encourage us to open elementary was the disease progress, and elementary students till they're about 10 don't seem to spread COVID. Once you're about 10 years old, you spread COVID like an adult. So, and this seems to be bearing itself out from what I'm hearing in the news, that where districts are taking on programs like we're doing and sticking to them, not, oh, what, now we're back and, you know, the masks don't matter and the, you know, this stuff does. If the districts that are sticking to the policies with elementary kids, we're not seeing COVID spread. What we've seen internationally, when you add secondary students, you add COVID spread. If the secondary students are basically adults as they spread COVID. So that's something that we're going to have to see the epidemiology develop before this one of 5 votes is comfortable saying, oh, let's bring back a bunch of secondary students, because we would likely light this town up if we did that, the way it looks today.
President Conforti, there is a question on chat regarding small cohorts, and I think it's getting a little bit into the weeds at this point in terms of how basically you're able to assist students in a small cohort as well as those who are on distance learning. But what's happening basically at elementary is one of the reasons why we limited the amount of time actually in person, is to allow time actually in distance learning for those other students. We actually have there is a reopening plan that was designed primarily for elementary. It's on our website. It's also is on the SCO website, as many other reopening plans are, which outlines all the safety precautions that are in place for not only students, but teachers. And so those are all built upon basically the recommendations from California Public Health and also our county health, and we'll continue to follow those as we bring back small cohorts at the secondary level.
Thank you, Mr. Philpott. Okay, next we have the consent calendar. The consent calendar items are routine in nature and usually do not require board discussion. Individual items may be removed by board members and presented for discussion in separate action. The consent calendar will be adopted by a roll call vote. Okay.
I move we accept the consent calendar as published.
A second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Did
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly
I
say?
think it looks like
Yeah,
you're saying
he's-
aye.
Okay.
He's saying aye.
Mr. Bazar?
Aye.
And Mrs. Conforti votes aye. It passes 5-0. Accept MOU between NCLUSD and NCLTA. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I move
Or-
approval of that or make that motion.
Do you need more do you need discussion on that?
I
Mr.
don't. Somebody wants one. Yeah.
If I may, this is simply basically an agreement that's already been made with the district and the union related to comp time and or payment for subs of our own teachers. And so because it's very difficult getting outside subs to come in, we have an agreement with the Teachers Association to amend their contract temporarily, where we're just paying the going rate to the subs, our own teachers, for either a period or a day or whatever it is that they're subbing for somebody who's absent. And this will be reviewed every quarter by our administration and NCLTA. determine whether it's necessary. So we'd ask that you actually just accept that agreement.
There's a chat.
1040 is muted. I can't hear.
Aye.
Okay, let me take
There you
that
go.
again. Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst? Aye. Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Bazar?
I just muted myself. Aye.
And Mrs. Conforti votes aye. It's passed 5-0. Okay, number 3, approve resolution number 20-21/07, temporary amendment to board policy / administrative regulation related to grades / evaluation of student achievement during the 2020-2021 school year.
Mrs. Conforti,
Yes,
I would move approval of that resolution with the following amendment.
okay.
Looking at page 4 of the resolution, it says, be it further resolved in order that upon the approval of the board, the new grading scale will go into effect immediately at the beginning of, and I would change the following line and substitute the line, current grading period of semester one of the 2021 school year, and then leave the rest of the resolution the same as it reads
Thank
in
you.
our
Ms.
agenda.
President,
Yes,
Conforti, if I may, there were several public comments made related to this specific agenda item, and I think it would be appropriate to read them into the record. There's also, and I know that you've received them all already, but I think it's appropriate to read them in the record for our guidelines.
Yes,
So,
please.
the first one, and they're all addressed to the school board. First one reads, I'm writing this letter to share my concern about the recent grade policy proposal presented to our yellow staff at a recent staff meeting. My understanding is the use of the 50% grade for assignments not completed by students has already been implemented for Q1 at Orsimba High School. When this was presented to us, our staff was made to feel that all the teachers were well informed and on board with the grading policy change at Orsimba. Most recently, my understanding is that there is divisiveness about the purpose of the policy and its effect on students on both the middle school and the high school campuses. At this time, I urge you to reconsider making this policy effective until the need and effect on our students is made more clear. Is this policy going to be temporary during COVID learning to adjust for inequalities in students learning from home? Will this policy stay etched in the stone for years to come? Most concerning, without transparency on this matter, we have no way of knowing what teacher input from our staff meetings has been utilized to make an informed decision on this action item. How was our input delivered to you as a governing board? Please reconsider taking the stance against making the grade change policy effective across Yolo middle schools until the effects on our students' academic standing and their determination and mindset to work with their grades is considered. Personally, I'd like to have more understanding of the purpose and to be allowed to give more professional input regarding such a policy change. Sincerely, Sharon Fantasia. Second letter begins, in regards to the passage of a grading policy that makes a grade of less than 50% an impossibility, I agree with this change in policy if it is temporary response to a national education emergency. If the board wishes to consider making this a permanent change to policy without consideration or buy-in from your educators, then I oppose. I believe we need solutions to keep our students from falling too far behind during distance learning. I would recommend the temporary passage of grading policy for the duration of mandatory distance learning. If the board wishes to extend this emergency measure, then it would be my recommendation that you take the issue back to the teachers and ask for their input to come up with a solution that is tailor-made to our schools and community, not just the blind adoption of what a neighboring district came up with. Thank you for your consideration. Renee Stearns, ceramics teacher, Orsimba High School. third one reads, we would like to express our concerns and disagreements with the possible approval of the 50% grading policy. One of our site goals is to prepare our students to be college and career ready. This policy would set a dangerous precedent that credit is given without the work being done, which diminishes the rigor that is expected from students. Colleges, universities, and jobs do not give students half credit for doing nothing. Most teachers have been very understanding and accommodating to students' needs during this difficult time. We have gone above and beyond our normal duties to help students so that they complete assignments and not earn a failing grade. We also have built-in measures to help students succeed, so this new grading policy would be another giveaway on top of all the accommodations already made. We would understand a policy in which we give students a fair chance at recuperating their grade for the second quarter, but the students that needed that chance are not taking it. They are still not turning in their assignments or participating in Zoom classes because they know that they will change their grade again at the end of the semester. We are already marking students present even if they do not attend Zoom class simply because they make contact with the teacher. So let's discuss other alternatives or options to help students and include teachers in those discussions so that we all have a say, not just to be told what we need to do. Thank you, Catherine Flores, Graciela Olson, Heidi Saldana, OHS teachers. Fourth letter begins, we would like to address the resolution to change grading policies for our district. As educators in our district, we have keen insight into the challenges facing our students. We've been using the policy under consideration for several years and have seen the many advantages of such a policy. Whether we like or accept the position we are in, the reality is, sorry, a little bit farther away from my glasses. Whether we like or accept the position we are in, the reality is as educators, our job goes far beyond content. We must teach many of the life lessons generally taught at home, such as integrity, character, and personal responsibility. We have seen that by giving students a 50% grade for incomplete assignments, we have not crushed their motivation to do better. In fact, as some have pointed out, that this grading system would be a detriment to the students, we have seen the opposite effect. Using the concept of grading for mastery, research indicates it is in the best interest of the students. When we give students a 50%, they see a way out of the many mistakes they have made. Just as you would not give a 16-year-old the keys to your car without plenty of practice, the same goes for teaching life skills. It is not our job to penalize students for their mistakes, but to show them how to correct them and to teach them about personal accountability. This is why we have come out and supported the resolution before the board. Sincerely, Corey Santor, Brandy Decatur, and Deidre O'Rourke. The fifth letter begins, when Yolo Middle school staff was first informed about the possibility of adopting a new grading policy, we asked the following. What is the reason NCLUSD is considering implementing a grading policy where teachers would not be allowed to give a student a 0 on an assignment that has not been completed? What is the purpose of this policy? Is it to ensure students maintain their academic eligibility for sports? Is it to ensure students do not dig themselves into an academic hole they will struggle to get out of? Is it to keep students from becoming disengaged and give up? While those intentions may be good, what we need to ask ourselves is, what will students learn from NCLUSD adopting such a policy? What students will be taught is that they will earn credit without having to complete an assignment. As educators, we are responsible for teaching our students about much more than just subject matter content. We are responsible for teaching them about respect, consequences, deadlines, responsibility, work ethic, perseverance, and being resilient. These are the skills and characteristics students need to be college and career ready. Implementing a grading policy that gives students 50% credit for assignments not completed is not preparing them for life. We are doing our students a disservice by not holding them accountable for earning their grades, credits, and diplomas. We are opposed to the grading policy that Newman-Crows Landing is considering. Sincerely, Yolo Middle School teachers, Maria Andrade, Cynthia Batista, Veronica Escoves, Samantha Felberg, Mark Malmberg, Giselle Pimentel, Stephen Roberts, Elsa Juarez, Angela Makovich-Reyes, Mia Ball, Steve Ledeen, Jaime Rico, Eileen Foster, Michael Phillips, Richard Cash, Casey Cooper, Sharon Fanazia, Melissa Clark, and Jennifer Villalobos. Finally, the sixth letter reads as follows. I do my best to teach students the importance of responsibility, effort, and perseverance. I teach them the importance of communication, whether it be with teachers, parents, friends, or bosses. By giving students half credit for neglecting to turn in assignments, we are setting them up for failure in college, their prospective career, anything they have to do in life that involves a deadline passed by someone of higher authority. If a student needs an extension, they need to be able to communicate to their teachers, even if it doesn't involve them telling the full story. This is part of the communication responsibility. Never in life will these kids ever get credit for doing nothing. They will go to college or into the workforce and will expect to get credit for doing nothing. Someone will ask them where they went to school, and when they say OHS, those bosses and professors will remember and never take anyone from here again. I became a teacher in hopes to have a positive impact on young people and to give them the advice that I myself would never consider, to prepare them for the real world and any challenge they may face. I wanted to help the students who have bad home lives and teach them that with hard work, they can build any life they want for themselves. Instead, I am lowering my standards. This sends a message that they don't need to try because they aren't good enough. It has to be done for them. The only problem is nobody else in the real world will do things for them. They will be held to the same standards as everyone else. They will not be able to comprehend why it is happening. Sincerely, Corey Felber.
Is there anyone that would like to speak to this? I would like to say that we, as board members, all received copies of these letters earlier this evening and were able to read about what you had said and think intensely about what was said and give discussion. We will be accepting this with its modification of the resolution for the extent of the COVID time in our schools. Is there any?
There needs to be a motion. For
Yes.
that.
So may I have a motion?
There's
I
a,
move,
there's a motion on the,
There is a motion by
Floor.
Tim with the
there's
change.
not yet a second.
I need a second.
I will second this motion.
Okay, Mr. Wallace,
Actually, I do have a little discussion as well.
thank you, please.
I want to talk also.
I've been spending quite a bit of time. I've gotten some letters at home. I've initiated some text conversation about this. And I do understand the problem of lowering your standards. But the math of this is really compelling. And I think that we're offering some real options with this. There's a 4-point scale that's in there as well. So if you're not comfortable with the percentage scale, I think we're going back and fixing a problem with percentages that a missing assignment is a 0. I don't know that we've really addressed that the idea is to truly make a missing assignment a devastating thing that it winds up being mathematically. And then my understanding from some of our conversations earlier, Mr. Philpott, is that you're committed to getting with the teachers and looking for something that's more permanent and more inclusive because I know that this is an area that I feel like assessment is something that I feel like has been done poorly since I was in school. I thought it was done poorly when my daughter just finished university. I think, assessment around the education system is something that we could improve. And this is something I'd like to see happen. I think that it's addressed in many of these letters, and it's certainly part of my thought that the fairness of this and the civil rights going forward, it's very different for different students. And so I feel like if Mr. Philpott's committed to starting a conversation with the teachers, then I can support this. One of the things that there's a theme through these two that, you got to make, when people make mistakes, it's got to be hard to make back up for it. And I'm reminded of the old saying, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But it's whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Sometimes there's injuries and mental health and even suicide is a serious problem in today's society. And I think for us just to say, well, suck it up, buttercup, is not a good enough answer. So I feel like I'm comfortable supporting this as a temporary, and it is temporary in the resolution. But I would encourage Mr. Philpott, I'd like to continue on past this temporary and involve our staff and let's come up with something better for the future and move us forward. That's my comments. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia.
Just from a student's perspective, I think that, as a temporary solution, it works. But I think that, at least for me personally, I can't vouch for every student, but as an AP and honors student, at least, it's very laborious work, but it also is super gratifying when you've actually invested the effort into getting it done, and that you're being credited for everything that you have given into those assignments, whether it be an essay or practicing calculus equations or anything. And even the same thing applies for regular students, because everybody's just different in the way that they're gaining knowledge and how they're reciprocating that onto the paper. So I think that from a personal standpoint, I think that it's as a temporary solution, it's ideal. But I think that in a long-lasting and longevital standpoint, it's something that I agree that Mr. Philpott and the teachers should definitely work out, instead of it just being student didn't submit anything, give them half credit. And once again, this just goes for all students, not just AP, honors, whatever other form of advanced placement that there is. So that's just a student perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. The other part too, if you're thinking of you were talking when you gave us your results, students now are having a hard time being motivated. It's not there. And this isn't just happening here. Again, it's happening all over. If you look at some of the other states, they have gone to this because you need to have some kind of achievement there. The other part too is that learning has to be built in. And some people right now, when you're talking about the Zoom, they sound like they don't think they're learning. So we need to help them understand that. But if you get 0, 0, 0, and then average that out with maybe a 65 or a 70, there is no way you are going to make it through that. We have to build in the process so that if you don't achieve the goal, say a 3 or you want an A or a B, how can I get there if I have gotten a 0 already? So, I mean, the conversation will go on with staff and with hopefully students too. Yeah, Mrs. Hurst.
Okay, I'm looking at one of the chat comments, and this was one of my concerns. And so I read again through the resolution. And the question is, if it is a temporary measure, is it possible to state that in the resolution? Currently, it contains language like until further notice and as long as distance learning is ongoing, which both can be seen as unlimited time frame. Okay, so I looked back through it, and I'm looking at the bottom of page 2 of page 4. Be it further resolved and ordered that the superintendent will temporarily modify the standards for the grading and evaluation of student work, and will temporarily revise the current 0 to 100 grading scale to one of the following. And then it gives the grading scale on page 3. And then on the back, as I'm reading, be it further resolved on page 4 that upon approval of the board, the new grading scale will go into effect immediately. And it says that continuing on with that, and will be used only for grading periods during which distance learning instruction happens. So I'm seeing that was one of my concerns, is that it was a temporary thing. And I'm seeing that language is in here. And so I just wanted to address that, because I looked through these letters carefully, and I just want to make certain that was addressed. Okay.
President,
I think they're,
Yes, Mr.
so one of the
Philpott.
questions that came up is how is this going to happen with me, and I appreciate Mr.
I am
Thomas, suggesting we continue the conversation. It is difficult in this given time, unprecedented time, to actually have any kind of conversation sometimes. But we're going to use a variety of methods, including thought exchange surveys, focus groups, not necessarily always in Zoom meetings, but hopefully small groups of less than 10 or so adults in a room such as we're in right now, so we can safely distance ourselves from each other. So those conversations will continue to happen. But I just want to share with you, and I know that the board is aware of this, is that your charge as the Board of Trustees is to set the direction of policy. This is a policy decision that at some point you have to decide, have I heard enough information related to it to make a decision? Because at some point, because this is temporary, any kind of permanent change would need to come back and would need your approval ultimately for any.
Mr. Philpott, Mr. Snodderly is trying to speak. Could you turn off your speaker?
Mr. Snodderly?
Yes, I kind of feel uncomfortable voting for this. You know, a lot of the teachers have strong opinions about it. Since I'm more handicapped than ever, I spent the weekend going through ed code and administrative regulations and all the way back to the ARs that say, you know, you can't change your teacher's grade unless, you know, they're incompetent or there's fraud. You know, I'd like to, you know, I kind of like to see somewhere in the resolution where if a 0 is warranted, a teacher needs to, you know, let their administrator know, this is what I'm doing. If the Zoom isn't working, this is what I tried to do to help this kid out. You know, these are the steps that I took to try to get him to do his one question for homework. You know, so I just hate taking that away from the teachers. You know, I understand it's temporary, but you know, I'm agreeing with the teachers that oppose it.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Snodderly. Mr. Bazar.
I think I've unmuted myself. Can everybody hear me? Well, it seems to me that some teachers feel obviously very strongly about it. But when I look at it and say to myself, well, how devastating would it be to have this 0? So you're a student in a class and you have, I don't know, 5 or 6 homework assignments. You miss several of them, let's say 2. You're not going to be able to make those points up unless the final or something is so heavily weighted that the homework assignments didn't really matter in the first place. If that's the case, well, then it turned out that 0 wasn't a big deal and the loss of the 0 power isn't a big deal either. But if the homework really is so important, and whether the child did that work or not is so important, that it can essentially ruin their chances of even getting a C. And I'll say right off the bat, or if you don't want to say right off the bat, within the first 4 or 5 weeks of the class period, or any other 4 or 5 weeks of the school semester, I think that's unfair. And I think it can be devastating for our students to be held to this standard when other schools are not. Now, I think I wrote in a response to I know I did, to somebody who sent me an email that was very well thought out, their email, that particularly in this COVID environment, some of our students, what they're going to carry away when they graduate, besides the education which we've given them, which is important, besides the diploma, which is super important, but what really is going to get them up to the next step is their GPA. It's a sad fact of life here in 2020, but the GPA is getting more and more important as opposed to less and less important. If standardized testing is going away, if there really isn't any kind of state proficiency testing that goes on in a high school level, we test our juniors, I guess, in some subjects, but none of that is actually looked at generally by a college and whether they're going to accept them. If there's no sporting events, there's no real extracurricular activity that can be evaluated. I mean, we're having some Zoom meetings, we're having clubs, and I certainly hope that they're a meaningful experience for the students. But I suspect that colleges are going to de-emphasize that because they don't know how to evaluate it. They can't compare it to anything else. So they're going to turn again to the GPA, just the GPA. So you take a student who comes, I think in our materials, we were told that Ceres had adopted this approach. I mean, it may seem like it's not that important when you're looking at a classroom of students, but if you're looking at one individual kid who's competing, say, from Morris Stemba to get into a particular Cal State campus, and he has to compete against somebody from Ceres who has say a 0.05% or 0.5% better GPA. I think it wouldn't be 0.5, it'd be less than that. And that kid gets in and our kid doesn't, I'd be devastated by that. I'd feel that I didn't do my job as a trustee if I didn't do everything I can do for my students in this school to be competitive. I think I mentioned also in an email that in response to one of the teachers, that I looked up online to see what other areas and states are doing. And I came across New York City, a huge school district that just, I may need to be corrected, but either on October 20th or November 2nd, it was very hard for me to tell when the resolution was actually passed. But anyway, they instituted a new system where essentially it's impossible for a student, it looks like to me, to fail a class, because instead of getting an F for a class, you get a instruction in process, I believe is what they describe it. And then they have some rules that say that the student is allowed to make up the material. The teacher will work with the student and assist them and then give them a grade. You can choose to have a pass if you want, or nobody's going to choose to fail. So you can choose a pass or you can choose a grade. And in no way can it affect your GPA. It says that right there on the rules. Now, I'm not saying I'm an expert in how this is implemented in New York or why it's implemented in New York, but if any of our students are going to have to compete against somebody like that, they're going to be put at a disadvantage. I understand we want to teach our kids to be responsible. And certainly every child in this school district should be taught be responsible. But I'm still hard pressed to see how if we've got a 16 or 17-year-old child or person, I won't call him a child, I'll just call him person, who screws up, who does not do their homework for several weeks in a row. We have some classes that there's no late homework accepted. Okay, so there isn't any way to get out of this once you've messed up. Could you retake the class? Perhaps. Could you try to do credit recovery? Perhaps. But we don't really have those mechanisms set in place, in my opinion, that are going to be an effective way for a student who's messed up like this to get their GPA back up to the level it should be. Now, they're not going to get any free A, as far as I can tell. I mean, if you didn't turn in a few homework assignments and you got a 50, not 50 points, but 50% instead of a 0, you're not suddenly catapulted to the top of the class. You're not sitting there, unless you can demonstrate mastery of the subject to the teacher's satisfaction when you do the final or submit the rest of your project, homework and other assignments, your grade's going to be lousy anyway. And if you continue to do it all through the school year, I think there was some here who were saying, well, you're giving them something for nothing. What are you giving them? They're still going to get an F. If you don't turn in the whole year's assignment, you're getting an F. The fact that you missed a few homework assignments during the school year should mean that you can't have an A? No. If you know the material, I don't see it, but that's a different policy. We'll bring that up perhaps in the wide-ranging discussion that should follow later. But in any event, it seems to me that the fundamental rule thing here is that we don't want to put our kids in a disadvantageous position. We want them to at least have whatever opportunities the other kids have in the Central Valley, I would say, in the United States as a whole. And at this point, given that we don't really understand what the effects COVID have had on our student body, I mean, we're saying to them, we want you to be responsible. We want you to step up. We want you to do the work. By the way, we really don't understand if you're depressed. By the way, we really don't understand if you're really not connecting with your class or your teacher because you only see them through the Zoom interface. So given how uncertain it is, it seems to me that it makes sense to make this change temporarily so that we can at least assure that our kids are on the same playing field or have a level playing field with other kids that we know of right now who are in high school in the United States of America and certainly in this Central Valley districts. Thanks. That's why I'm in favor of it.
One of the things too, we're saying our children have to be responsible. Our teachers have to be responsible in letting our students know that these are things that have to be completed. We'll work with you, we'll do whatever we can, but the final part is you can't just sit there and do nothing.
Yeah.
It's not a freebie. School is free to go to, but you have to do something to earn that responsibility part. And our teachers are responsible, but sometimes you have to go over and above what would be your normal day. And I speak from that as a teacher. Mr. Wallace.
Comment on a couple of things that have come through the chats. People are asking what's going on in other districts. From what I'm seeing in my CSBA work, Modesto City Schools is adopting this. Like we are, they're seeing an unprecedented number of Fs in their students in ways that does not reflect their student performance in a normal year. And so Modesto City Schools is obviously Ceres is doing this. And it's a pretty common thing that I'm hearing several of my fellow board members that I work with in CSBA say the same kind of thing. And then my second was, Mr. Philpott, a question to you. This resolution gives 3 potential grading systems. The first one is to replace a 0 with a 50% in the percent grading system, so that a missed assignment isn't 5 times worse than and I'm being flippant with my math there, but a missed assignment isn't multiple times worse than failing a assignment that you turn in, or getting a D in an assignment that you turn in. But we've offered a 4-point scale, the percentage scale, and then the opportunity for something negotiated, if I'm reading the resolution correct. Will that be a choice that teachers have? Will that be something the administration adopts on a site-by-site basis?
Well, each one of them is similar in the fashion that they become more proportionate across the grades, from F through an A. So I have heard some teachers actually speak to simply giving a grading scale where an F is actually a 0, and then using an A as a 4.0 on an assignment. But giving a 50, what that does is it eliminates the disproportionate amount of score on a 0, and it gives an opportunity for a student to make up something that they have a hard time basically digging themselves into the hole. Many of our home visits that have happened, and Mr. Pruitt has shared this with me, some of the ones he's gone out with, is that when he goes to the homes, the situation in the homes is not good. It's almost hopeless. And that is the feeling that a lot of our students have. And I will tell you that my gut feeling is that the students who responded to the thought exchange were not productive, are ones who are actually not doing well at home. Mm-hmm. They're not the ones, these are ones that are mainstream. And I see Diego kind of shaking his head, yeah, because I think that the students that we're missing are the ones who are just feeling, there's nothing else that I have. I can't dig myself out of this hole. Mm-hmm. What's the purpose? And we have had several teachers who have actually gotten thank you notes from students when they have implemented this, saying, thank you, it gives me an opportunity now to move forward. And just thank you for doing that for us. But as Mr. Bizarre pointed out, that's not, you don't really work all the whole thing. You're going to split it in half.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay. Then we're going to go to approval of the resolution. We have a motion by Mr. Bizarre and a second by Mr. Wallace. Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst? Oh, sure. Mr. Snodderly?
No for me.
No. Okay. Mr. Bazar?
Aye.
I vote aye. And Mrs. Hurst?
I'm going to vote aye.
Okay. It passes 4-0.
Mrs.
One,
Conforti,
zero.
it's generally partly pro that Mr. Snodderly get a chance to address his no vote if he would like to.
Yes. Mr. Snodderly, would you like to speak?
Well, no, I've already, I've already said, something needs to be done, but I think there should be a compromise here. It's just that we have so many teachers in opposition. I would rather see it go back and I don't think this is so critical that we have to do it tonight. I know Mr. Philpott has put a lot of work into this, but there's obviously some problems out there. So, I would prefer that it goes back kind of almost to the drawing board to, before we do another resolution here.
Okay. This is in flux. So, and it will be the whole time that COVID is here. So we can reevaluate it as we're going along, I believe. Okay. Are there any other comments? Okay, the resolution passes 4-1-0. Okay. Approval of the annual and 5-year developer fee report for the year 2019-2020. May I have a motion? Or Mr. Philpott, would you like to speak to it?
We use every once in a while, actually, just explain it if you need an explanation of what it is.
Yes, it's required that we file a report with the board every year within 6 months of the end of the fiscal year. And we report out how much developer fees we were collected and what they were used for and what the balance is in the account. And we take into account the previous 5 years. We look at it over a 5-year span. And I can tell you, let's see. In 2019, 2020, we collected $15,279 in revenue and spent $451,024. And we left a fund balance of $831,757.
May I have a motion to accept?
She's muted again. I can't hear Janice.
He's saying something like.
Would you say that again, Mr. Snodderly?
Your microphone is muted, at least on my end. I can't hear you.
Thank you.
There you go.
Got it. Mr. Wallace said aye. Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
I think that was aye. Mr. Bazar?
Aye.
And Mrs. Conforti votes aye. It passes 5-0. 5, approve school plan for student achievement for Hunt Elementary, Bonita Elementary, Von Renner Elementary, Hurd Barrington Elementary, Yolo Middle School, Oristimba High School, and West Side High School. These are reports we had to read, very similar, but does anyone have discussion on any one of them? No? Okay.
No.
Yes, Mrs. Hurst?
I don't want to make discussion on one of them. I just want to say that reading through these, there's so much work that goes into these, and I'm so appreciative of it because coming from education, I know there's so much on your plate to begin with, and just what I read was really great.
May I please have a motion to approve the school plan for student achievement for the schools noted?
I'll make the
Make
motion.
that motion. I think this is a world record for me making motions.
I know. We're going to give you a gold star. A second?
I'll second it.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace,
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly,
Aye.
Mr. Bizarre,
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye. It passes 5-0. We have future agenda items, a first interim organizational meeting, and the school of the month is going to be YOLO. Is that going to be done by Zoom? Hopefully it'll be done in person.
Zoom or video.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Philpott, your report?
I'm just going to briefly say that it's been a long year and a half since March 19th.
Yes.
Many of us have been working nonstop since March 19th. A lot of us can't wait for some kind of break. And I know that Veterans Day, I celebrate Veterans Day, and we want to honor our veterans, but that's not much of a break in a couple of days for us. Thanksgiving is looking pretty good, and the winter break. And our teachers, staff, classified as well, have just done a tremendous job supporting and working with our children in this district, and I know they will continue to do so. So as we already kind of talked about it, I am going to be working with secondary on some plans for some more small cohorts being opened up in January. We'll have a discussion and work on some small focus groups, if you will, to discuss grading. But my experience when I have done grading discussions, this is not something that is solved within a short period of time. This is a very emotional subject that will take a long time to resolve, something that is adequate to everybody. But what you did tonight was basically an emergency that addresses the need for the most hopeless and vulnerable in our student population. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Look at the last chat. No, mine doesn't have it. What is the Mr.
Oh, if both Mrs. Conforti and Mr. Philpott have their mics on at the same time, so you guys need to toggle, please.
Yes. Do we still? Mr. Bizarre?
Oh, I don't think I have much more to offer. I gave my little speech earlier, so.
Thank you. Mrs. Hurst?
Yes, I have a couple of things. First of all, that was a very, very tough decision for me on that one resolution. I was wondering, some of the chats seem like they need to be answered. Will anyone be answering those chats? Okay, all right. Once again, I want to say kudos to everybody for what they're doing. And something came up whenever Mr. Garcia was doing his report about distance learning. And I just want to put in a little plug here because Lions Clubs has their speech contest coming up. And the topic happens to be the pros and cons of distance learning. So I think since there was a thought process on it, there might be some of you who might want to take that on. I don't think I would, but you're more than welcome, okay? So I really applaud the students and the staff because I know everyone's working very, very hard at everything. Oh, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mrs. Hurst. And Mr. Snodderly, do you have anything to say?
Oh, I'll keep it short. I want to compliment Mrs. Mendoza. Mrs. Mendoza does a fantastic job with the food distribution system. Now, I remember my days as a superintendent in a small school district in Merced when the commodity truck shows up and the driver refuses to help you unload the truck. I don't know if that's true here. So sometimes they would call for the superintendent because I'm the only one available to go out and unload the stupid commodity truck. It's a semi sometimes. You can get a big block of cheese, 25-pound block of cheese. You could get 4 cases of salmon, whatever. But Mrs. Mendoza does a great job. I follow her on social media too. She goes out of her way on Facebook and I don't know where else to tell people where they can get food. Now, every now and then there's somebody on there that, maybe is, one wheel's loose or whatever. They'll tell her that she's given Diablo Grande preferential treatment on food distribution or whatever. And she handles all those disputes quite well, much better than I would, and with Measure X, there were people in social media that were, putting wrong things out there about our measure. And Mrs. Mendoza handled the comments, tried to get the facts out there in a very professional manner. So I appreciate everything you do with the food program. It would be a terrible mess up if, you didn't do such a good job. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace.
I was going to start by thanking the teachers, but I'll finish with thanking the teachers. We just approved our single plans for student achievement, and I don't want to let go without noting how much work we have to do. And that's a great deal of the reason why I'm so interested in assessment. I see assessment as part of data and figuring out what we need to do and making good assessments of what we've been doing. We've been working for a long time on academic vocabulary, and they're still showing up. At the end of the day, about 3/4 of our students are not meeting state standards. So we've got a lot of work to do. And maybe that's the best segue to, oh my gosh, when I look around and I see the work that we've been doing, I'm just floored by how I've always known this district is always, I go to these other districts, I look at what they're doing. We have great kids and we have really hardworking staff. I'll go to other districts and I'm like, your staff does what? Ours just work through that and they get it done. And so I really want to compliment. I know that there's lots of people really struggling and really pushing hard out there. Tonight we had to make a decision as leaders what we were going to do, and I think there was urgency to it. But I really recognize how hard this has to be and how much work you guys are putting in, and I want to express my appreciation. Thank you very much. And 40 some odd people, almost 50 people listening in tonight. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be a part of this conversation. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia?
Just wanted to give a quick thank you to the teachers for providing their opinions and what they believe regarding the passage of the agenda item. It gives a lot of perspective for whatever side you want to go with for the measure. So thank you to the teachers.
Thank you. Thank you for spending that extra time. I'd like to say congratulations to our whole city and voting area for Measure X. You'll see a lot happening over the years. I'd like to thank Diego for taking the time out to do the survey with Mr. Philpott and that. Also, staff and administration, you do have Veterans Day, but when it comes to the holidays, please do some R&R. You need a break a little bit. And one of the things I'd like to say is thank you to everybody. You will have the same board that you've had the last couple years. We have all been, some of us have been elected again, and looking forward to working here and making our school even better than what it was. And thank you. Okay, have a good night. Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I guess I can make that.
Whoa, you now have a gold star, Mr. Bazar.
I'll
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Enjoy. Please have a good time and relax.